Another time this last semester, we did a dinner and a movie on a Saturday night. Potluck dinner at 6, and we had a movie at 7. Once again, I got this big screen TV. The first time we did this, I remember we watched the movie A Big Fat Greek Wedding. Have you seen that movie? That was a great movie. It's a great movie to have a house full of people over because it's just funny, and it's just more fun to laugh with a group of people. We had a house full of people over one time this last semester, and 2 or 3 people, as they were leaving, this time they turned to me, and they said, "You still got that Bible study going on Tuesday night?" And I said, "You know what? As a matter of fact, I do. Last summer, I had another guy. He had been coming to my class. I hadn't seen him for a while. He was what you might call an inactive member. And since I hadn't seen him for a while, I called him up. At a different time in life, I probably would have called him up and said, "Mark, where you been? I hadn't seen you in class in a while." I haven't seen that works all that well, to call them and invite them to class. And so my strategy is don't invite them to class. Instead, invite them to a party. Now I wanted to make sure Mark would come to this party. So we had a very small party, a party of 2, me and him. These parties can take on quite a wide variety of forms, and it could be just me and him. So I called him up and I said, "Mark, wanted to see if you wanted to do lunch sometime next week." And he said, "Sure, that sounds great." We set up a time and a place and so on. We got about 15 minutes into the lunch. He looked at his watch and he says, "Do you have some agenda here or something?" And I said, "You know what? I should have explained that. I have no agenda whatsoever. I just wanted to hang out and have lunch and see how you're doing and so on." Now, we're not fast friends. Truthfully, this is the only time we've ever gone to lunch, just kind of casual, second, third tier friend kind of thing. But the last time I had talked to him, I remembered that he had said something about his father having some medical problems. So as a courtesy, I thought I'd check up on that. I asked, "How's your dad doing?" He said, "Well, as a matter of fact, my dad died on July 17th, or whatever the day was." And reflecting on that conversation, I found myself thinking, I wonder if anybody accompanied him to the funeral. And I asked the question because I have come to understand that the world lives very different lives than we do, both in terms of the fact that they don't have a vertical relationship with God, but also in terms of the fact that they don't have a horizontal relationship with anybody else. They don't have friends anymore. There's community in here. It's warm in here. We know that because if you got the dreaded 2 a.m. phone call tonight and there was a death in your family, there'd be a casserole sitting on your dining room table at lunch tomorrow. It's true for most every one of you. But what I want to invite you to see is the world lives a very different life, both in terms of the fact that they don't have a vertical relationship with God, but also in terms of the fact that they don't have a horizontal relationship with anybody else. They don't have friends anymore. Maybe that's why we like watching Friends so well on TV, because we don't have any friends. We'd like to imagine a place like Cheers, where everybody knows your name, or at least where somebody knows your name. And we don't have any place like that. And so if we will love people in common, ordinary, pedestrian ways, inviting them to our home and watching the Super Bowl with them and so on. Anyway, I talked with Mark about his dad and how his mom was doing and so on and different things like that. And as we wound up the lunch, this is an amazing thing because it is almost like people go to pagan school to learn how to react, because they respond so consistently in many cases. And as we were winding up the lunch, he says to me, "You still got that Bible study going on Tuesday night?" And I said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do." And he came that night. Now, people are not going to come every single time. I want to be very clear. This does not work in every case. I don't want to try to overpromise. There is not a one-to-one relationship between every invitation and every time they show up. Sometimes you'll invite them and they won't come. Sometimes you'll invite them and they'll say they'll come and they won't come. Sometimes you'll invite them and they will come, but they will not come to Bible study. There's not a kind of one-to-one relationship. My promise is not that you could get together with some people after church at noon tomorrow and that they would come to class the next week and get saved the next. That's not my promise. My promise is this: if you will live this way on a consistent basis, if you will teach a halfway decent lesson each and every week, nothing less will do, and if you will invite every member and every prospect to every fellowship every month, consistently and systematically, inviting every one of them, top third who come all the time, middle third who come every now and then, bottom third that never come to Sunday school, you got a class roll that looks like that? Don't invite them to class. Instead, invite them to the party. And my promise is, if you will live that way over a consistent basis, you can grow a class from 10 to 14 in a year. And if you can perfect that skill, you can reach 1,000 people in 10 years. Through groups that are doubling every 18 months. I tinker with the math just a little bit. I was kind of mixing two little mathematical formulas, but you get the point. We're not far from right there. And the strategy is, if we can get them to the party, we would not be able to keep them from class. I think what has happened is we have stumbled onto a way to make relational evangelism systematic and consistent. We all know that relational evangelism, by far and away, is the most effective evangelism known to man. Far more than crusades, far more than visitation, far more than VBS, far more than getting on television, far more than anything else you can name, relational evangelism, the vast majority of us come to faith in Christ because of the relationship between with a friend or family member. It is by far and away the most powerful evangelism known to man. But relational evangelism has a huge, huge problem attached to it. It is like a very, very, very fast car that's out of gas. It really is a fast car, but it really is out of gas. And the problem is, we don't get around to it. Now, I'd like to be somewhat optimistic and say, I think we mean to. We intend to. We have good intentions. But many of us don't get around to it. For many of us, it's been a while since we had a spiritually significant conversation with someone who is far from God. And I'd like to say, as I say, we have good intentions in many cases. You may have heard a sermon preached a time or two where the pastor say on the first Sunday of the year will say, we want this to be the year of evangelism. And we want all of you to get a list of 10 people that you're going to start praying for. And we want you to start mingling with these people and going to lunch with them and rubbing shoulders with them. And as you go, the New Testament says, as you go, the Great Commission says, and as you go, we want you to share your faith with them. And you write down your list of 10 names and you start praying for them, and you make a good intent to see these people and contact these people, and the pastor sets before you the goal of trying to see one of them place their faith in Christ in the next year, and you pray about that and you want it to happen. But a year later you think, what goal? What was that I tried to do? And I think we mean to, and the part of the reason is the nature of lifestyle or relational evangelism itself. It's not something you can put on your to-do list. If we could reduce lifestyle evangelism to something that you could put on your to-do list, we are responsible peoples, and we would get around to it. We would do it because we're responsible people, and you give us something to do and we'll do it. You put it on our shoulders and we will shoulder that responsibility. But lifestyle evangelism, how do you put that on your calendar? Well, I think that we've figured out a way. We have figured out a way that you can, to make relational evangelism something that you can put on your calendar. You can put it on your to-do list, and that is once a month you're going to have a party. And you're going to invite every member, top third that come all the time, middle third that come every now and then, bottom third that never come. Don't invite them to class, invite them to the party. Invite every member, and then keep up with a list of prospects. Invite every prospect to every fellowship every month, and give Friday nights to Jesus from time to time. And you can do this. By doing this, you can double a class every 2 years or less. It begs a question, and that is, what is love anyway? Sometimes we tell these stories about the sacrificial and dramatic nature of love, and sometimes love calls for that, but sometimes love is very, very simple. If you want to communicate to your wife that you love her, you don't actually have to hire a marching band to do it. You don't have to buy her 3 dozen roses. You might try this. You might try going home tonight, turning off the television, setting down the remote control. Now, I've had guys disagree with me at this point and speak up and say, I just don't think I can do this. But, you know, if you could, you might just listen to her for 30 minutes or an hour. And by the way, I've had a woman or two who also disagreed, and they said, forget the conversation, I want the roses. Send me to Hawaii, forget about this conversation kind of stuff. So it may not work in every single case. But I think in many cases, love at its best is sort of simple. And I want to say, if you want to communicate to people who visit in your worship services that you love them, you don't actually have to pay off their mortgage or buy them a big screen TV. All you got to do is create a simple opportunity where you can listen to the simple story of their life, because love at its best is sort of simple. Love at its best is sort of pedestrian. That it's earthy. It's Diet Coke and coffee cake and table games and those kind of things. And somehow in the mix of that kind of stuff, people feel thoroughly loved. Love at its best is kind of boring in the sense that your life and mine has a certain mundaneness to it. Your life and mine has a certain boringness to it. A lot of people think my life is real exciting because I fly about 100,000 miles a year. I'm just about to cross 900,000 miles on American Airlines alone. And a lot of people think, man, that sounds like an exciting way to live. And truth be known, sometimes I get to do some fun stuff. I told you last night about going to the men's final of the U.S. Open tennis tournament a few years ago. Agassi and Sampras were playing. That was a great match. And, last week, we had a day off during the middle of the week, and my wife was with me. We got to go to the JFK Museum up in Dallas. That was kind of fun. A month or so ago, we had a day off again in Pensacola, and I got to go parasailing that day. That was kind of fun. And every now and then, we get to do some fun stuff. But most of my life is pretty much another hotel room, another rental car, another fellowship hall, another 3 hours in DFW Airport. Welcome to my world. But you know what? When I call home, if Missy's not traveling with me, oftentimes she will ask me, what kind of car did you rent? And when she asks that, somehow I feel like she cares. When she asks me about the picky details of my life. And if you want to communicate to people that you love them, you don't have to pay off the mortgage. You don't have to buy them a big screen TV. Love at its best. It's kind of simple. It's kind of pedestrian. It's kind of boring. And you just need to create an opportunity where you can talk to them about the picky details of their life. Stated a different way, I like to say it this way, and that is the fellowship is not about the fellowship. It's about the fellowship. That is my way of saying it's not about, if you do a bowling fellowship, for example, it's not about how many pins you knock down. It's actually about a conversation that's going over here while somebody else is knocking down some pins. And while this little conversation is going on, that's why we had the fellowship. The bowling was just kind of an excuse to get us together. So love at its best is sort of simple, it's sort of pedestrian, and it's sort of boring. All right, we said we want to invite every member and every prospect to every fellowship every month, and then we want to give Friday nights to Jesus. Giving Friday nights to Jesus is an informal time of Diet Coke, coffee cake, and table games. Giving Friday nights to Jesus is an informal time of Diet Coke, coffee cake, and table games. Cards, I believe I have here. Giving Friday nights to Jesus is a metaphor. Now, I invariably have people miss this point, so I'd like to really kind of hammer away at this just a second. Even just a few weeks ago, I had hammered away on this point, and somebody came up to me, actually came up to Missy at the book table, and they didn't say exactly this, but I don't remember the details of the conversation, but something along these lines. They said, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this Friday Nights for Jesus thing. Oh, really? How come? Well, my son marches in the marching band, and he has football games on Friday nights. And I think I need to support him and go to those football games. And the deal is, Friday Nights for Jesus is a what? It's a what? All right, good. It's a metaphor. That is, do you think it has to be Friday night? No, it does not have to be Friday night. It could, in fact, be, for example, it could be pizza on Sunday. It could be pizza on Sunday. True story, Sunday school teacher in Missouri. His name is Chris. And he grew his class. The first time that I was with him, he'd grown his class from 4 to 40 in 9 months. You know how he did it? Pizza on Sunday. That's right. Some of you are getting into this stuff. You're getting it. It's clicking for you. I can see it. It's pizza. And then I came back to his church the second time. He had started a new class. He and his wife and 2 other couples, 6 people started a new class. I said, Chris, when you're able to reproduce this class, would you send me an email? And 6 months later, he sent me an email. He said, Josh, we just want to check in with you. Want to let you know that we are we're going to be starting a new class, and we're going to be sending out 25 people into a new class, and we're going to have 35 in our class. He went from 6 to 60 in 6 months. In fact, he called me about a month ago. He said, Josh, just want to check in with you. I need to ask you something. We're back up to 40 again. I'm ready to reproduce my class. But here's the trouble we're having in our church. We can't get enough preschool and children workers. So instead of sending out 10 people to start a new class, I'd like to send 10 people down to the preschool and children areas to be teachers down there. And he wanted to know, is that a legitimate expression of doubling? You think that's a good idea? I think that's a very fine idea myself. I thought that was a great idea. And what is his strategy for getting this done? Pizza on Sunday, right? He has never in his life given a single solitary Friday nights. He does what a lot of pastors do. He wanders around, and he's kind of a gregarious, outgoing kind of person, and this comes kind of naturally for him. And so he'll tend to wander around the auditorium like a lot of pastors do before the before the 11 o'clock service. He comes to Sunday school at 9:30, and then goes to the 11 o'clock service, and he'll wander around the auditorium in a way implementing this plan I call zone offense. You know, wandering around, paying attention to who's there, and then he'll find somebody doing this week by week. He'll do this week by week. He knows who the visitors are and who the newcomers are and so on. And so doing this every week, he's picking up on this. And he'll find somebody that looks like a real pagan. How you doing? All right, good. And they may or may not be a pagan, but they will be a prospect for his class. And he actually told me his dirty little secret last time I was with him. He actually will turn to the kids, and he'll say to the kids, "You kids like pizza?" You think that's kind of cheating? I think that's cheating. And then he'll turn back to mom and dad. Of course, the kids will say, "Yeah." And then he turns back to mom and dad and he says, "Well, listen, you know, a bunch of us are going to go get some pizza after a while, and we'd love to have you join us if you'd like to come with us. We'd love to have you join us." That's his strategy. And he grew his class from 4 to 40 in 9 months, 6 to 60 in 6 months. Called me again a month ago, back up to 40 again, ready to get rid of 10 people, send them down to the preschool and children work, and his pizza on Sunday. This is what you got to do somewhere along the line, and I'm going to give you an assignment here in just a second. The assignment is to come up with 20 things that you could do, all right? That's what we're going to work on here in a second. But what you got to do while we're talking this morning is you got to translate my details into your details. Now, I cannot connect all of the dots for you, and quite honestly, this doesn't work everywhere. 2 examples just recently where this doesn't work. Somebody came up to me not too long ago and said, "I teach 90-year-old plus shut-ins. How am I going to make this work in my case?" Well, I don't know about you, but if they're truly shut-ins, they can't get out. I'm not sure this idea is going to work. I mean, there's probably somebody knows something about ministering to shut-ins, but it's not me, and this isn't it. I had somebody come in Minneapolis recently come up to me and say, "I work in a jail ministry." I don't think this is going to work in a jail ministry. I don't think you guys are going to be able to get these people out to do the party. This doesn't work everywhere. You know, I had another guy come up to me one time and he said, "I don't think this is going to work in my case." I said, "How come?" He said, "I don't really like to do anything." And I said, "Work with me here, friend. Maybe it didn't come up on my list, but there's got to be something you like to do." He said, "No, I don't like to do anything. And what's more, I'm married to a very boring woman." That's what he told me. "I'm married to a very boring woman. She doesn't like to do anything either, and we're just 2 happy little clams staying home doing nothing together." And I pushed him a little bit, and after a while, he kind of came back with a different answer. He said, "Now that you push me," he said, "there is something we like to do. Once a year, we like to go into the city and go to the opera." How y'all doing with opera? You like opera? I'm not a big fan of opera myself, and I'm told about 2% of the American population enjoys opera music, 2%. So his situation is once a year he likes to do what 2% of the American people enjoy. And I said, "You know what? You better get you a visitation program going. You better get you a hot evangelist in here. Get on TV or do something." There's a million ways of doing evangelism, and I'm telling you, I'm humble enough to say this is just one, and God is blessing all kinds of ways to grow his churches, and this is just one way, and it's not going to work everywhere. It's not everybody's plan. It works in a lot of places, but it's not going to work for everybody. But what you got to do is you got to translate my details, the myriad of details I'll tell you, and translate them through this lens, this metaphor of giving Friday nights to Jesus, and out into your own details. So let me ask you to work on this. Once again, as we talked about last night, I want you to turn to the person next to you, and just in case there's some new people, that could be actually then the person next to you, or just form little groups of 2 or 3. And I want you to come up with 20 things that you could do. 20 things. Now, you're not committing to anything at this point, so that's good news. You're just kind of brainstorming about 20 things that you could do. Now, to make it a little easier on you, let me invite you to think about the calendar. You might start with Christmas. Let's just start there. And you might do a Christmas party. If we start with Christmas, then the next party would be what? New Year's, all right, very good. And then the next party is what? You missed one. You're not listening. Super Bowl. Thank you. Now, you don't have to do the Super Bowl party, as I said, but at this point, we're just trying to brainstorm as many things as we can. So you could put Super Bowl down on the list, and then you can go to Valentine's Day. And if you kind of just think through the calendar, walk through the calendar, you'll get about half of your 20 done right there.